My name is Nataraj. In this video, I am going to talk about different types of Java frameworks that are available in the market. Before that, let me revise what I have talked in other video regarding frameworks. A framework is a special software that is built on the top of what? One or more technologies, having ability to generate common logics of the application dynamically to simplify the application development process. That means while working with the framework, you are not bothered about common logics of the application. You have to bother about only application specific logics. For example, you have an application with 100 lines of code. In that 70 lines of code is repeating again and again in multiple applications of that particular technology. If you develop the same application with a framework, there is no need of writing those 70 lines of code. You have to just worry about what? Remaining 30 lines of code, which are called application specific logics. That means while working with the frameworks, there is no need of worrying about common logics. We have to just generate what? Application specific logics. In that video, I even talked about difference between plain JDBC application and Spring JDBC application. In plain JDBC application, I have written common logics and application specific logics. And I said there is a boilerplate code problem. When it comes to Spring JDBC application, I concentrated only on what? Application specific logics. That means there is no boilerplate code problem. So if you want to get more clarity on this, please refer that particular video once. But in this video, I would like to talk about various types of Java frameworks that are there in the market. So we can categorize Java frameworks into three types based on the kind of applications we develop. Okay. Number one, web application frameworks. Web application frameworks, also we can call them as what? Web frameworks. What's the use of this one? These frameworks are built on the top of MVC, design pattern or architecture, to develop web application fastly and accurately. Designed to develop MVC architecture based web applications. Designed based on servlet, JSP technologies, mainly servlet JSP technology. It may use other technology support, but these are designed mainly based on what? Servlet JSP technologies. For example, you take servlet JSP based web application development. No framework, normal technology based application. You have to write both common logics and what? Application specific logic. And the entire communication, navigation, everything you have to take care. But when it comes to framework based web application development, like struts, Spring MVC, JSF, a number of things. So common logics it will take care, and we have to bother only what? Application specific logics. So overall, it will simplifies application development. What application? Web application development. Generally in every web application, presentation logic will be there, integration logic will be there, business logic and persistence logics will be there. If it is servlet JSP based normal web application development, all the logics of all the layers we have to take care. When it comes to framework based application development, integration logic and navigation logic will be taken care by what? Framework, because which is common in all web applications. Okay, only remaining logic, that means presentation logic, business logic and what? Persistence logic should be taken care by the programmer. So framework is always there to take care of what? Common logics, and just makes programmer to worry about application specific logics. Overall, if you work with the framework, there is no need of worrying about common logics. You have to worry about what? Application specific logics. If I give examples for If I give examples for Java web frameworks, we have struts, which is outdated, little bit outdated. Only in the maintenance projects we are seeing struts. So from Apache, we have something called JSF from Sun Microsystem. Then we got Spring MVC. Spring is different, Spring MVC is different. Spring MVC is part of Spring framework, but it is a sub framework only to develop web application. From Interface 21. Next, there is something called WebWork, Open Symphony. Next, ADF, Application Development Framework, quite costly, from Oracle Corporation, and etc. Many are there. If I give popularity ratings, number 1 is Spring, and after that, yes, there's a little bit popularity for what? JSF, and only in the maintenance projects people are using what? Struts. But I can say some companies are using Struts 2.0 in a scratch level development projects also. So this is about web application frameworks. Number 2, ORM frameworks. These frameworks are given to develop what? OR mapping persistence logic. JDBC persistence logic is SQL queries based persistence logic. SQL queries are somehow database software dependent. That code is somehow not portable across the multiple database softwares. I want to develop objects based, database software independent, portable persistence logic across the multiple database softwares. That is nothing but OR mapping persistence logic. That means there no SQL queries will be there. Everything will be developed in the form of what? Objects, but no doubt internally it will take the support of JDBC code. But as a programmer, you will get abstraction layer on what? JDBC, and simplifies persistence logic development. More importantly, it allows us to develop what? Objects based persistence logic. Right? For that purpose, we have got ORM frameworks, object relational mapping frameworks. So what is this? Designed to develop objects based database software independent persistence logic. Simplifies persistence logic by providing abstraction layer on plain JDBC technology. So we call it as what? ORM, object relational mapping frameworks. In the market we have different types of ORM frameworks here. So let me give the examples. So number 1, you know that market leader is what? Hyderabad. Hibernate. From what company? Softtree. Softtree is acquired by whom? Red Hat. Then Hibernate. From which company? Apache. OJB, Object to Java Beans. It is also from what? Apache. TOPlink. It is from Oracle Corporation. JPA, not JPA, we should say Open JPA kind of thing. It is from Sun Microsystem. And many other things are there. If I give popularity ratings, number 1, Hibernate, that's nice. Number 2, yes, there is a bit popularity for Hibernate. Then we can see this is really doing well. So let me spend 1 minute time on why should we go for ORM frameworks. There are many reasons. In the video of what is need of Hibernate, I will talk all these things, but I just want to present this point. Let us assume we have a object. What object? One student object. Having what? Student number, name, address. How many values are there? 3. Number, name, address. This data I want to insert into table by using JDBC code. What should I write? Insert query. Can I pass object as the input values of the insert query? No. Because in the SQL queries, in the insert queries, we cannot pass objects. What should I do for that? Read the object data into simple values and take those simple values in and pass in the query. That means we are converting object notation data to text notation in order to use in what? Persistence operation. Question is, we are an object oriented programmer. We would like to see everything happening in the form of objects. But what this JDBC is telling, though you have a data in the form of objects, if you want to use that object data in persistence operations, especially in the queries, you cannot use objects as it is in and the query as input values. You have to convert object data into what? Simple values, and you have to use them in the SQL queries. That means as a Java programmer, though you are getting everything in the form of object, for the sake of this JDBC, we have to convert what? Object notation data to what? Simple values. That's a really bad practice or not? But when it comes to any ORM software like Hibernate, we can happily do persistence operations on objects. There is no need of converting what? Object notation data to text notation. There is no need of converting object notation data to what? Simple values. This is the one reason why people are preferring to work with what? ORM softwares. I repeat, in JDBC programming, though we have data in the form of object, student object, employee object having a lot of inputs, we cannot use those objects as it is in the insert SQL query to perform persistence operation. From the object, you have to get simple values. That means number separately, name separately, address separately, and these values you have to use in what? Insert query. Then only persistence operation is possible. That means we cannot do persistence operation directly on the objects while working with what? JDBC. But when it comes to OR mapping, that is possible. This is the one reason why people are crazy about what? ORM frameworks. So now we got application frameworks. Number 3, what? Application framework. It provides abstraction layer on multiple Java J2EE technologies. JDBC, JNDA, RMI, EJB, Servlet, JSP, Java Mail, many things, and allows us to develop all kinds of application. In fact, allows us to develop all kinds of what? Logics. So such frameworks are called application frameworks. Using application framework, we can develop a standalone application, web application, 3-tier application, 2-tier application, enterprise application. That is what? Spring. So Spring is the application framework that is available in the market. So what should I say? Provides abstraction layer on multiple Java J2EE technologies. Allows to develop all kinds of applications and all kinds of logics. It's very simple and straightforward. Using Hibernate, only persistence logic. Using struts, only web related logic. That means web application. But using application framework, something called Spring, we can develop presentation, integration, business logic, persistence logic, multiple logic. In fact, we can develop all kinds of application because it just provides abstraction layer on what? Multiple technologies, right from JDBC to Servlet, JSP, EJB, multiple technologies it provides. In fact, it provides abstraction layer on 1-2 small frameworks also. Spring provides abstraction layer on Hibernate kind of framework. Spring provides abstraction layer on Hibernate kind of framework. So that's why it is called what? Application framework. So example for application framework is Spring. Right now Only one thing is there, Spring from what company? Interface 21. I generally feel Hibernate is like a lake. Lake means what? Small collection of water. Because it can be used only to develop the persistence logic. Maybe better than JDBC. JDBC means queries based persistence logic, which is database software dependent. But Hibernate means object based persistence logic, which is database software independent, moreover portable across the multiple database software. That means the persistence logic that you have written for one database software can be used to talk with what? Another database software also. That's why we call it as portable persistence logic. But at the end it is a persistence logic. It cannot be used to develop other logic. That's why Hibernate is what? Lake. Next, Struts JSF Spring MVC, web applications. MVC2 architecture or MVC architecture based web application can be developed very nicely. Other than web application, we cannot develop anything else. So I can call it as a river, Ganga river, Godavari river, this kind of rivers. And Spring is like ocean. Spring is like ocean because it provides abstraction layer on multiple technologies. It allows us to develop multiple types of logics. It allows us to develop different types of applications. That is the reason I call it as what? Application frameworks are oceans. Especially Spring is what? Oceans. So definitely Spring is so powerful than what? Any framework that are there in the market. In fact, if we use Spring for 100%, there is no need of using Hibernate and Struts kind of framework. Using one Spring, we can develop what? All kinds of application, all kinds of logics. As of now, market is underutilizing Spring. Okay, the day people use a Spring for its 100%, I don't think there will be a need of what? Other frameworks seriously in the market. So these are what? Application frameworks. Okay, so though it is nowhere related to regular Java GW module programming, but nowadays people are even talking about big data frameworks. So though I said three, but I am presenting fourth one, big data frameworks. What is big data? The data that is beyond processing capacity is called as what? Big data. Genotabyte, petabyte, enotabyte, this kind of. YouTube generates petabytes of data per day. So Gmail generates terabytes of data per day. So this data cannot be stored in a regular database software, cannot be processed like by using regular systems. We need a special mechanism to process such data, to analyze such data. So the frameworks that are given to process this kind of big data, which is beyond processing capacity, is called as what? Big data frameworks. But the beauty of these big data frameworks is we can use ordinary computers in a chain, okay, to process that particular big data. That's the beauty of it. That means regular commodity hardware, that means regular small computers can be used to process this big amount of data, this huge amount of data. So nowadays Java is providing some frameworks for that. So if I talk about big data frameworks, so I can say Hadoop, so from Apache, then Spark, I assume it's from Apache, like this. There are many big data frameworks also there. There are multiple what? Big data frameworks in the market. So these are the different types of frameworks based on what? Kind of applications we develop. Based on the kind of application we develop, these are the different types of frameworks. But now I would like to present various types of framework based on mode of development we do. What is that? Mode of development we do. This is another interesting one. So different types of frameworks based on mode of development. invasive. Next, non-invasive frameworks. Number 1, invasive framework. Number 2, what? Non-invasive frameworks. Let's try to understand what is invasive framework, what is what? Non-invasive framework. Very simple here. Invasive framework means whatever classes we develop for the applications of project, for the applications of the project that is happening by using framework. If those classes are extending from framework specific class or implementing what? Framework specific interfaces, then it is called as what? Invasive framework. While developing classes for the framework based application, if those classes are forced to implement framework APIs applied interfaces, forced to extend from what? Framework APIs applied classes in order to become resources of the framework based application development, then it is called as what? Invasive. That means application code is very much tightly coupled with what? That framework API. Without touching that framework API, you cannot develop anything in that particular framework. Tight coupling means what? Degree of dependency is more. For example, you take a struts 1.x especially. And there is a class called form bean. It's ordinary Java bean only. But that Java bean must extend from what? One framework supplied class called action form. Then only it is called as what? Form bean of struts 1.x application. That means if you want to develop form bean and if you want to use form bean in struts 1.x application, that class must extend from what? One action form class which is given by struts 1.x API. You like it or don't like it, you are forced to extend from what? That action form class. Observe very carefully, form bean is a Java bean, but you are making that class extending from what? Action form class. In this process, your class is tightly bound with what? Struts 1.x API. So that means degree of dependency is increasing with what? Struts 1.x API or not. This is called invasive. What's the problem with invasive frameworks, sir? Tomorrow you want to use classes of the application in another framework environment. Sorry, you cannot use. Why? Your classes are tightly bound with what? Current framework related class and interfaces. Your classes are implementing current framework API what? Interfaces, are extending from what? Current framework API classes. So that means your classes are tightly coupled with what? Framework. That's why it is called invasive framework. The bad part of invasive framework, you know, you have developed beautiful classes having beautiful logics, okay, but the problem is those classes are what? Tightly bound with what? Framework APIs, struts API, some other APIs. Tomorrow that framework is outdated or you didn't like the framework, you want to work with another framework. In another framework logics will not change, but you cannot use the classes in another framework as it is. Why you cannot use? Because how to use? Because these classes are already bound with what? Old framework related APIs and classes. I will present something like this. Let us assume you developed 10 classes based on struts 1.x environment, having beautiful logic. Somehow you didn't like struts 1.x, you decided to move to Spring. If you try to move these classes to Spring environment, Spring says no, you cannot. Why? These classes are already tightly bound with what? Struts 1.x API. That's why there is no question of what? Working with the Spring environment. So forever you have to use them in what? Struts environment. That means your code is tightly bound with what? One API. This is what? Invasive framework. It's something like this here. You joined in a company said that 3 years bond. And after that you are not liking company, or company you are getting so many problems from company, but still you will be forced to continue with that because bond is there. Now you cannot come out and join in other place. This is what? Invasive. If you want to come out, you have to break, restart your entire career from the scratch. You cannot show that old company experience kind of thing. So this is called invasive because you are tightly bound to that company. So what about non-invasive? In this framework, whatever classes you develop, whatever code you develop, that code is not at all bound with what? Framework APIs. That means if we develop classes in this environment, these classes are no way going to implement interfaces of framework API. No way going to extend from classes of framework API. You can develop all the logics in ordinary classes and interfaces. Ordinary class and interfaces. Your code is not bound with what? Okay, framework specific classes or interfaces. You will develop logics in ordinary classes. That means your totally code is not bound with any framework API. Your class is not going to implement framework specific interfaces. Your class is not going to extend from framework specific classes. But in ordinary class, in ordinary method, you can write a logic. Then how framework behavior comes, sir? At runtime by supplying libraries, at runtime by supplying libraries, we provide that framework functionality. What's the advantage of it? Very simple. Tomorrow you didn't like one framework, take the classes, as it is you work in another framework by supplying that framework libraries at runtime. How it is possible, sir? Why not possible? Because these are ordinary classes, not bound with any framework API, so that you can take those classes and you can use happily in another framework environment. That's very openly possible. So what are the examples for non-invasive framework? Spring, Hibernate. So all latest frameworks are what? Non-invasive frameworks. All latest frameworks that are there in the market are non-invasive frameworks. So what I want to say here is application code is tightly bound with framework APIs. Application code is not bound with framework APIs. Spring, Hibernate, all this comes under what here? All this comes under non-invasive frameworks. What frameworks here? Non-invasive. Because your code is no way tightly bound with what? APIs. Actually, non-invasive framework passes one challenge. What challenge you know? Hey programmer, come to me. Use my, develop the classes, write your code, supply my framework libraries at runtime, enjoy the framework facilities. Tomorrow you didn't like it, no problem. Take your classes, run in other framework environment by providing that framework libraries at runtime. Your classes are free to move from one framework to another framework as you wish. Why? Because I am not going to force your classes should use what? My framework API. For example, I developed 10 classes in Spring framework environment. While developing, those classes are not bound with Spring API. Use Spring libraries at runtime. I might say jar files at runtime. Happily enjoy Spring facilities. Tomorrow you didn't like Spring. You want something else. Take the same classes, move to another framework, supply that framework libraries, okay, happily your code runs in another framework also. Maybe that framework may be ADF kind of framework. So you have a freedom to move one framework to another framework happily without worrying about, okay, whether this code runs or not. Why? Because your classes are totally free from framework APIs. But invasive is not like that. You are developing code means that code is bound to what? That framework API, and you cannot leave that framework to run the same code in another environment. If you want to develop in another framework, you have to rewrite the same code in what? Another framework environment. So that means non-invasive is something like this, joining in the company without bond. Joining in the company without bond. Yes, work as many days you can. As long as you like the work, you continue in that company. Not like it, resign. Okay, happily start the career in another company. So here no bond, no commitment kind of thing. So that's why it is the trend of working with what? Non-invasive framework. And the good news is all latest Java frameworks are designed as what? Non-invasive framework. Struts 1.x is outdated. We failed because of what? It is invasive. 2-point text somehow designed non-invasive, but because of Spring MVC domination, people are not preferring to use what? Starts a 2-point text. So now my suggestion to all you people is spend more time with the frameworks, and I suggest you people to work more and more with what? Non-invasive framework rather than invasive framework. Right, Spring is what? Application framework, so that we can use to develop all kinds of application. At the same time, non-invasive framework, that's where it's the #1 Java framework in the market to develop real-time projects. Right now the slogan in the market is no Spring in your profile, no Spring in your profile, okay, no Spring in your resume, no job for you, no intro will call you, no interview call for you. That is the slogan about what? Spring framework in today's market. I hope you benefited with this video. Okay, so here I have talked about types of framework based on what kind of application they can develop. So majorly 4 types of thing I have given. What they are? Web application framework, ORM framework, then application framework, big data framework. Later I have categorized the frameworks based on what? Mode of development that is possible. There I have given invasive framework and what? Non-invasive framework. So thank you. You can catch me for more videos in this Naresh IT channel. Thank you.